Tony Pantages, you are the CEO of Octaform. What exactly is Octaform? And just give me a brief description of that. But tell me what your job entails on a day-to-day basis. What do you do as the CEO of this innovative company?
That's a good question, and I don't think I've ever actually asked myself that before. What I do is try and inspire an incredibly talented team to keep doing what they do. I believe I'm not the smartest person at our company by a long shot. I'm really inspired by the team first. So what I do is try and open up doors so that my team members can keep coming up with solutions to the challenges that are put in front of us.
Okay, on the surface I go, isn't that great? But you also have to make a myriad of decisions every day that ensure that the company is going in the appropriate direction. Mm-hmm. What does that process look like for you? How do you gather those inputs? How do you go about making decisions? And then how do you direct the team to make little course corrections through the day and over time?
It starts by having a dream. So having a goal far off in the future. In business terms, there's the term BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. Mm-hmm. So we have a big, hairy, audacious goal in the future. I'm not going to talk about what the numbers are, what they are, but for me, it's about starting there and then working backwards to today so that we can set out on that journey.
So you're reverse engineering that process.
100%. That's exactly how it works. We know where we want to go. We know who we're going there with, both on our team and with our customers. And then we look at the challenges along the way and we try and get smart and figure them out before we encounter them.
So how many different elements of your company, though, are there that you have that are ultimately reporting to you?
Well, we're a team of about 25 now. Most of us are here in Vancouver. There's some of our teams in Calgary. We have a warehouse team down in Texas. And we have a new employee out in the Middle East right now that's starting to open up that market for us as well. So think of it as the old pirate system. You want to have people around you that can bring you the news of where the treasure is. And then you want to set off to go and get it. And you want to do it in a way that you're not really disturbing anything so that other people want to follow your path. You're doing it on your own. So we look at the projects and we're focused in specific areas. We don't just produce products, we produce application-oriented products. So tanks. We make aquaculture tanks. We make the best aquaculture tanks in the world. Pretty easy to sell when you've got the technology that works. That same technology, instead of putting fish in it, if you put waste in it and allow a little bacteria to do their work, that's a biodigester. You're making renewable natural gas in that kind of tank. Take that same technology, put it in a different array, you run poisoned or dirty water through it, and through a series of different channels and events, filter that water out. There's wastewater treatment plants. I'd say those would be our three big applications that we go towards. So we're constantly trying to evolve the way we both work with the technology, but also work with the customers and what their needs are. Because as we know, 10 years ago, we were thinking about clean energy. We were talking about clean energy. It's 2023 now. We're completely focused there. The Biden administration down in the States last year lit a fire. And now all of a sudden we're seeing massive amounts of infrastructure projects coming in the States alone. So we're developing ourselves one way towards that market, and in other ways towards Europe or other markets that have different needs. I find that Europe is a little more advanced than we are in terms of getting there from here to there. And we use a lot of that modeling to decide where we're going to go here in North America. So I guess to answer your question is, we're just thinking all the time and we're coming up with solutions.
Okay, but for you go, okay, well, we're going to take this tank technology that we've developed and we're going to come up with another application. So that means you've got an R&D department. Yeah. They must be reporting to you and you have to direct.
Yeah, and I want to point one thing out. Lots of people report to me, but I report to the founder, Dave Richardson. And Dave himself is what I'd say, I refer to him as Yoda. He has the answer that I need all the time. So when people report to me, I actually report to him. Mm-hmm. And we have the discussion about what we're coming up with at the company, right. Where we're going to go. I have an incredibly talented executive management team who actually make all the decisions for me, and I agree with them, just to be honest with you.
So because this is about careers and your career in particular, you're the CEO of the company, but you still have a boss that you report to, and then you have a team that's reporting to you, and then they have layers that report to them. You're kind of this facilitator or liaison between all those different departments. How did you wind up in a position like that? Like, what was the skill set that you brought to be able to make that, like, to function in that environment? Because you don't go to a university to learn specifically that in this industry.
Yeah, great question. I got here through a tremendously curving snake-like river that brought me here. I went to business school, but I didn't go into business. I became an actor, and then I became a director, then I became a producer, then I was running production houses. And the whole time I was doing that, I was an energy nerd. I was just so into systems and change, and I guess science fiction stuff for me in my mind back then. So I wasn't that kid who got straight A's at school and went to engineering to get into clean energy. I was almost the opposite. I think the only reason why they passed me in high school is so I wouldn't come back the next year. And my path was through storytelling. And becoming a storyteller allowed me to be able to converse with people in a way where we could have compelling arguments or debates or conversations. And that always kept leading me back to energy. It was always coming back this way. So I didn't give myself the credit I probably should have when I was producing all those projects around the world and hiring a team and making a commercial, and 3 weeks later they were all gone, then hiring another team to shoot a film for 6 months, and then they were all gone. What I was really doing was starting companies, doing a business, and then finishing that company, and then starting another company. So in my mind, I've probably started about 200 or 300 companies in my time. I just never gave myself the credit for it until I had a bit of a religious experience. I left entertainment and wanted to devote myself to clean energy pursuits. And from that moment, it was just me against the world. So I just needed to teach myself a lot really quickly.
Okay, that's a big leap. Like, a lot of people will come up to that and go, yeah, that's what I want to do. And then look over the edge of the cliff into the abyss below them and go, I don't know what to do. Like, how do you take that next step?
Well, if you have an acting background, you can pretend that you know what you're talking about. And so I think I got enough gray hair now that I realized when I was younger, I knew everything and kept trying to report that to people. And as I got older, I realized how little I know and how much I wanted to learn. So instead of knowing everything, I just want to learn everything now. So I looked over that abyss, and what I saw was, I guess, a pretty huge challenge. Who's going to take me seriously in clean energy? Why this guy? Why should I? And I realized if I knew what I was talking about, and if I could explain it in a storytelling way, then it was easier to get in than showing someone a big fat resume that I'd worked at 5 other companies that had done this before. And I just chose my own path.
Did you have financing in place, or were you like independently wealthy that you could take this risk?
Sure,
or,
you need $1 million?
Did you just,
yeah, I've got plenty.
Or did you just step forward?
I was stubborn as hell. And on top of that, I had 2 young children. I have 2 young children. And when I looked in their eyes and I realized, what am I doing? I was doing make-believe. I was, and I certainly mean that with respect to all storytellers and filmmakers. It is the hardest challenge in the world to pull off. Any businessman with a spreadsheet can say, I'm making this product for 40 cents and selling it for $2. Who wants to invest in this? Everyone does. Here's a filmmaker. I'm going to make a love story. It takes place on Mars. Can I have $10 million? It's not quantifiable. So I spent 30 years of my life explaining unquantifiable things and trying to get money for them. And as soon as I stepped into the business world and showed things in a quantifiable way, it was so much easier. It's just, business is so much easier than entertainment. So that's
okay.
how.
But a lot of people go, how important is it that you just get started?
Oh, you got to be stubborn. If you question yourself at all and say, well, does this make sense? You're already not an entrepreneur. if you say to yourself, this makes no sense at all and I'm still going to do it no matter what, you're an entrepreneur. So I'm an entrepreneur.
What do you think are the essential components of your personality that put you in place to be able to take this path through life?
Simply having the two greatest parents on earth who showed me the respect for the earth. Growing up here in Vancouver and on Hornby Island, where there wasn't TV, there was no internet, there was no movie theater. We had clams, oysters, salmon, cod, scallops, and the ocean in front of us. That was probably my grounding force, was being attached to Mother Earth. And then having the ability to believe in what I wanted to. My parents instilled in me, if you want to do something, do it. And they're the reason.
How important is curiosity?
Oh, it killed the cat. And there's nothing better than curiosity. It's what's going to get you through the wall of no, as I like to call it, because there's going to be plenty of those in front of you. And unless you're really wondering what's on the other side of that wall that everyone says you can't get through that.
Did you have circumstances where you're moving along and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have some big breakthrough here, and that there's a eureka moment? Or was it a little bit more like Isaac Asimov, the scientist, goes, well, it wasn't a eureka moment. It was sort of like, well, that's kind of odd. And then you follow that. Or is it a combination of the two?
I think it's C, all of the, or D, all of the above, definitely. But I can pinpoint moments in my life that absolutely changed the course of it and went for it. And the most important one was an epiphany that I had that I just mentioned earlier. At the end of my film career, I was shooting a documentary in the Great Bear Rainforest, possibly the most natural place on Earth. And we had traveled farther in than colonial First Nations people had ever gone by pumping fuel in a helicopter a couple times to really go further. We were in a river system, and for people that don't know the Great Bear Rainforest, it encompasses a great deal of British Columbia's coastal land, and for hundreds of miles inland. It's not enough. It's not the size that we'd like it to be, but it's an amazing piece of land. There is no landing strip. There's nowhere for a plane to drop into. In fact, there's probably 100 planes hung up in trees over the past 100 years there that we'll never find. The canopy is over 100 feet high, and the only place where you can see the land is when a river doglegs a little bit, and you'll see a little sandbar there. So we were able to land in a helicopter, get out, and we all had chest waders on. Some guys had fishing rods and shotguns. I had a big, huge camera. And I was standing in a river, don't know what its name is because it's not on a map anywhere. And I had everyone clear up past the river so I could get just a true shot of the river going by me, that great metaphor for life. And while I was shooting it and trying not to breathe too much because I had the microphone capturing the sound too, something started tapping me in my back over and over. And I didn't want to move the camera. It was on a monopod, so I was trying to hold it. And I looked back over my shoulder, and there was about a 15-pound steelhead salmon just lazily swimming and tapping me in the back. And then as I looked behind, it was a triangle of them, probably 50 or 100 steelhead salmon in a river that was only, waist deep. And when you go to the sides of the river, the fry were like, it was almost like mud. There were so many hundreds of thousands of smolts on the side. You can't walk in the forest because the growth is too thick, so you have to walk through the rivers. And while I was standing there with those fish around me, and I realized that steelhead's been to the ocean and back. I took a helicopter over 3 mountains to get here, and that fish has probably been to the ocean a couple times, and it keeps returning here. I don't know what it was, but that very second, I had 2 babies at home, and I realized in film, I'm putting guns in people's hands and making them point them at each other, and there's make-believe going on, but I'm not really changing anything. And I realized how much I wanted to change things. So I decided that I was going to devote my life in towards that passion I had for energy and go into clean tech and clean energy. I came home, I told my wife. She sat there and she's used to me coming up with preposterous ideas, so luckily she accepted it. A few months later, I met a young builder He had a vision for deconstructing homes instead of demolishing them, and together we formed a company called Unbuilders that deconstructs homes. Our great technology was we do what our great-grandparents did. We use a hammer and nails to pull things apart. In Vancouver alone, we were putting over 4,000 houses a year into the Delta landfill, crushing them, throwing it all in the landfill. Those houses are made out of old-growth wood, trees that were 500 to 1,000 years old. We see them as little bungalows that are cheap and we want to tear them down. Once you take that outer skin of the house off, you're left with old-growth wood. And those beams and studs and boards are priceless, and yet we throw them in the dump as if they're waste. Again, waste is just value with a bad reputation. We were able to put a pin in that and stop that. We helped rewrite the green demolition bylaws in Vancouver. Vancouver became the first place in North America where deconstruction became the focus as opposed to demolition. My partner wanted to take the company on to Dragon's Den, and he did, and he was very successful. All the dragons joined on, and I exited at that time. I used that to form a clean energy company that was looking at waste plastic to low carbon fuel pathways, because I saw that as a bigger challenge than just lumber, was actually plastic waste. I spent 2 years developing myself for that project. I had a couple people that believed in me. Shout out to Ryan Peterson of Finger Food Studios, a genius who saw the future coming too. And he helped me create a pathway to develop myself and develop that project. Unfortunately, that project wasn't able to get off the ground because the technology wasn't mature enough for it yet. I was left in a position of, oh no, I've really done it this time. I've built this whole system up and it can't do anything for a bunch of years. I was incredibly lucky, as I've been many times in my life. And the other investor in that project, Dave Richardson, turned around to me and said, hey, I've got another idea for you. Why don't you come over and work with me, you and your business partner? So I immediately came on board with him as a consultant just to look at his different projects. And Dave has his main company, Octaform, that I'm now running. And he also has a number of clean tech projects that he's a very passionate investor in for the future of everyone, really. And I fell in love with Octaform, his main company, and saw the value and where it could go. And last year he asked me to come on board and take over as leader. And it's been the greatest challenge of my life because it wasn't my idea, it's someone else's idea. And yet it's been able to focus me in a way that I've never known myself to be able to do. So just very lucky.
What a great career that you've had so far.
So far.
And it will continue on. Thanks for sharing your story.